This particular consciousness engineering training is with a guy that you may not have heard about, but he wrote a book that was voted by Foreign Policy magazine as one of the top 25 must-read books of 2013. And he wrote that book when he was only 26 years old. He is one of the smartest young men I've ever met. Before I tell you what we're going to be talking about, let me just tell you what he's accomplished. He's shared the stage with Nobel Peace Laureates, former presidents, and fellow entrepreneurs. He's the founder and CEO of Assertive You Media, Inc., an educational company devoted to advancing storytelling literacy and entrepreneurial endeavor. He has been nominated to be an advisory member of the board and international council at the Human Rights Foundation, and he's not even hit his 30th birthday yet. He is Sudanese, Afro-Arab by birth, Qatari and Malaysia by migration, British and American by education, and currently lives in Canada. His name is Amir Ahmad. So here's what we're going to be talking about. I'm always fascinated by how Amir could build such an incredible brand for himself, where he's being invited to speak at companies like Google at such a young age. And Amir became my consultant and advisor in different aspects of storytelling and branding. One of the things I learned from him is that as an entrepreneur, if you want to get noticed, if you want your business to get noticed, you have to master the art of telling your story. But Amir's spin on how to develop your story is what is truly unique. This is what I'm going to be taking you through. So I did this exercise with Amir in a Starbucks. It was supposed to be a 1-hour exercise. I was so mind blown. I begged him to stay, dragged it out into 4 hours. And then I was so impressed with the results. I asked him if he would consider coming on board this program to teach you. Amir's book is coming out in the next 1 year. The book is called $1 Billion Ideology. Brilliant name, right? And it's really about how, as a creator, as an entrepreneur, if you can dive in deep and figure out your story, you can get the world to notice you. It is a brilliant form of getting your business name or your name out there. In this consciousness engineering training, we're going to take you through the same process Amir has taken me through for Mindvalley. Here are a couple of things we're going to be covering. The importance of mission, entrepreneurship as a means goal, what sets successful entrepreneurs apart. Clue, it's got to do with a certain degree of self-awareness, identifying your values and beliefs and how these tie to your origin story. And then you're going to learn to go through the origin story process. You're going to understand psychological and practical outcomes in building up this origin story and creating a value proposition so that you end up being someone who gets noticed, so that whatever good you're doing in the world, whether it's a business or a book you're producing, people start paying attention. Amir has been advising me for several years now, and I'm so excited to be bringing him to you on Consciousness Engineering. So Amir, tell us, why is this topic so important in today's world?
So here's the thing. In today's world, entrepreneurship is becoming a very big topic, right? And entrepreneurs today, they're like the rock stars of yesterday. But in the process of entrepreneurship becoming such a big topic, what has happened is that people have gotten very enamored with it. And so they see entrepreneurship as this very cool, sexy, exciting thing that they want to be. It's like, oh, I want to be the next rock star. But so what? The thing is, what do you want to bring to the world? How do you want to serve the world? Because that's really the key question, right? And entrepreneurship is just simply a vehicle to achieve a larger mission, whatever that may be.
So here's the gist of it. Every now and then, we meet an entrepreneur who has their own business and started this business perhaps because they wanted a little bit extra money, they were tired of working for someone else, maybe they wanted some freedom, but they're miserable in their business. And I meet more entrepreneurs who are miserable than entrepreneurs who are truly going, oh man, I love my business, I love my life, I wake up every day doing what I love. And the reason for this is because culture-wise, we buy into the myth of the entrepreneur. And the myth of the entrepreneur looks like this. It says that entrepreneurship is an end goal. In reality, it isn't. Entrepreneurship is not an end goal, it's a means goal, right? The end goal is often so much more. The end goal might be freedom. The end goal might be money. The end goal might be waking up every day doing something you absolutely love. And if that is what you want to do, maybe entrepreneurship is that option. But maybe it was something else. Maybe it's joining a company, that is aligned with your mission. Maybe if you care about the environmental issues, it's working for a company like Tesla. The problem is so many entrepreneurs end up building a business that is out of alignment with what they really want to do in life. And that's why, Amir, one of my favorite quotes from you is the idea that it is not about building a business with a mission. That almost sounds forced. It sounds like you're saying, okay, great, you got a business, slap on a mission so people buy more from you.
Exactly.
Instead, what you say is seek your mission and turn your mission into a business. Build a mission with a business.
Exactly.
And few people I know have done that as well as you. Tell the audience your story, because it is mind-blowing.
So the thing is, Vishnu, we've known each other for a very long time, right? Since 2007. And throughout that time, you've known a lot of stuff about me, but there are certain things that you didn't really know. Now, I was born in northern Sudan to Afro-Arab parents. I grew up in a mixed family. And then we moved to Qatar when I was in a very young age. And after that, obviously, I came to Malaysia. In Qatar, I went through some very formative experiences, which for a very long time I did not want to think about, I did not want to deal with, because I guess you could say they were difficult. And part of that experience was religious indoctrination. So I remember myself going to the neighborhood mosque, and I went there on my own. Nobody forced me to go there. I actually chose to go there because I wanted to learn the recitation of the holy text because it sounded very melodic. Right. And there's a lot of beauty to it. And so I chose to go there. And in the process of being there, what happened is I started to have questions. So life is a test? That's what God said? Okay, so perhaps it is a test. But then, doesn't God know everything? And if he knows everything, doesn't he know the future? And the Imam would say, yes, Amir, God is almighty and all-knowing, and he's the greatest power in the universe. He is the creator of the universe. And so, of course, he knows the future, he knows the past, he knows the present, he knows the future, which really confused the crap out of me as a little kid. Because if God knows the future, then how do I get to decide what the future is if he already knows it, if it's already been predetermined? Then, it just doesn't make sense, right? So I had all these kinds of questions, and I would ask, for instance, dear, teacher, are there aliens on other planets? And he would say, no, that there's no such thing. There are human beings, and there's angels, and then there are demons. End of story. Which also baffled me because I was a kid who loved Japanese sci-fi, and I would read all these comic books about aliens from outer space and spaceships. And that was never cultivated in that classroom environment in the mosque. So what did that do? What did that do? And I didn't know it, of course, because I was just a kid. We don't know what happens to us as kids. We just kind of leave those memories behind because we don't want to deal with them. But they impact us so much as we grow up. And so, in essence, you can do your best to forget about them, but guess what? Your memories, they're locked in there and they're never going to forget about you. They're always going to come back to nudge you, to like little, give you little pokes, and sometimes to outright haunt you if you leave them undealt with. So fast forward to the future as an adult, and I'm struggling. I'm struggling in university. I'm struggling with the idea of getting a degree and going to a conventional, job and having that kind of career. And I guess you could say I also had trouble with figures of authority who did not foster questioning, who did not foster an environment where you could be creative. No wonder I ended up in Mindvalley. We could probably talk about that sometime later. But what I realized looking back, by going back to my origin story, going back to my childhood, is my life took a certain path because there were certain things that I valued. I just wasn't so sure about them. But when I did certain exercises, I realized, oh my goodness, I value freedom of expression. I value freedom of thought. I value independence. But why is that? Why do I feel so passionate about those specific values? Why not other values like community? And it's all stuff from my origin story. It's all stuff from childhood. I tried to ask certain things, I was shut down. I tried to express myself, I was shut down. And that really stayed with me.
Growing up in a fundamentalist religious society where free thinking was shut down, where the imam told you how to think and how to believe and what to believe, that restricted you. And so now today what you're saying is you value freedom of thought. You value secularism, right? I'm guessing your values stemmed from the shit you had to go through as a kid.
Now, if we take that to entrepreneurship, here's the funny thing that happens, right? So I would sit down with entrepreneurs and there would be, they would be frustrated with the way their company works, with their life. They're not satisfied. They feel trapped in their business. But what do? They go read more business books. They try to market more, to make more sales, make more profits. But yet they're still miserable. And of course, because they haven't taken the time to cultivate greater self-awareness within themselves. So I asked them, so you're not happy with your business, you feel trapped in your business, you don't feel fulfilled. Interesting. Tell me, what happened in your childhood? And they just look at me like, what do you mean? Why should I talk about my childhood?
And so let me share this. I was doing an exercise with Amir yesterday. That's why I have this piece of paper. And the exercise was so powerful, I immediately set up this shoot so Amir could share it with you guys here on this program. Amir asked me what my values and my beliefs were, and he kept pressing me. And I started writing down, well, I value transformation, connectedness, compassion, growth as a goal, humanism, aesthetics, vision, happiness, love, change, self-directed learning, questioning, innovation, futurism. And then he probed me further to figure out like what was it that happened to me as a child. And what happened was I went to a really horrible school. I went to a really horrible public government school where I never got to grow, where teachers shut me down, where I never felt love or compassion. I was abused and bullied. And so all of these, the opposite of all of these, became my values. I was forced to read god-awful, boring textbooks. And that's why self-directed learning is actually one of my values. So it's no surprising that I created an education company. So you see where we're going here with this? As you go back to your past and see what hurt you, what pained you, that might often be a clue to what that mission is that you are meant to bring forth into the world. And when you can align that with the business that you're creating, bam, that's when you can really start to make a difference.
Right.
Amir?
And so most companies would hire consultants, and the founder would sit with this consultant who would talk about cultural transformation and change, and would say, we want to come up with a new set of values for the company that we're leading, and we would love for you to facilitate this process for us. And then they would write a bunch of values that sound cool, like, oh, maybe we should put courage, because that's a really cool value. Ooh, how about integrity? Integrity is such an important value. How can we be a company without integrity? Let's put it there, let's put it there. And so what that leads to is what I call creating a culture of stealing other companies' cultures. Right?
Right.
So we sit down, we go, that's such a cool value. I love what they're doing there. Maybe we could have that too. Which leads me to another provocative statement. And I would actually ask the audience, right now you, who's watching this, to really consider this. Very much so in American culture, especially when you go through personal development books and a lot of aspirational stuff, you come across these notions of you can be anything you want to be. And I'm not saying I disagree with that. In many ways, that is true. If you set your mind to something, you can be anything you want to be. If you believe it enough, if you're passionate about it, if you follow through, you take massive action, and you persevere, of course you can be that person. But you can literally be anything you want to be, because your childhood determines a lot of things. You can literally say, I'm going to value these sets of values just because they sound cool, or maybe I'm enamored with them. It doesn't really happen that way. In some sense, you are limited in what you can be. And that's actually great news, because it limits your options, it makes you a lot more focused, and it brings you in alignment with who you are in your core. And who you are in your core, in a lot of ways, will be determined by your childhood experiences. There is no escaping your childhood. The things that you went through, Maybe they dented your confidence. Maybe you were a kid who loved dancing and you were expressive with your body and you were told, gee, turn off the damn music. Why are you dancing all the time? Do your homework, which just made you value dancing more and more. If you had strong willpower, if you were ambitious, if you refused to accept convention. But sadly, what happens is most people get shut down and they just follow the convention and they go to their jobs and they live their normal lives, but they're unfulfilled. And they're unfulfilled because they're so disconnected from that original yearning that they had inherently within them as kids. So origin story is really the most powerful part of this whole process, and it is the first part. Origin story. What happened in your childhood? And then based on that and how you grew up, what did you end up valuing? And so we get your specific set of core values. Now here's the best part. Again, they're not values that you were enamored with and you stole from somewhere. They're values that are true to you because of what you went through. And so because they're true to you, they're unique to you. And because they're unique to you, nobody can compete with you. Those are your core values. And then from there, you can have a certain kind of company culture. You can have a certain kind of ethos or philosophy or core ideology to build a mission around. And then that mission can go on to touch so many lives, especially if you've done the inner work to heal the inner child. And then now you can go and help heal others who went through similar experiences. So in hindsight, a lot of stuff makes sense to me. Why was I attracted to Mindvalley? Why did I ditch 2 Fortune 500 job opportunities where frankly I would have earned a lot more money and decide to join Mindvalley? It's no surprise now for me in hindsight. It's because you as the founder had a core set of values that you implemented and put into action, and you built a company around that really resonated with me, and then I was attracted to. Which is why we have such a great community here of so many people who are like-minded, who share similar views, right? Because you were very clear about your core values. Now, you didn't go through a process like this. In your case, you used meditation. And you had a very good intuitive grasp of what those things that felt right for you were. But this process makes it even more crystal clear.
So what you're saying is, when you're setting a value, if you're in a company, or if you have your own company, or you're planning on starting one, make sure that the values of your company flow from you, the founder. Yep. And the mistake that many people make is, rather than have the values come from within, which often, the root cause is what you went through as a kid, they borrow values from other people's companies. Right. And this is when you end up with a really unappealing, BS, unemotional set of company values.
Exactly, and no conviction comes through, and if there's no conviction.
Let's take people through the exercise. What do you call this exercise?
I call it the origin story exercise.
The origin story exercise. So by knowing your origin story, you'll be able to know what type of companies to start, what type of companies to work for. And if you're in a company right now and you feel dissatisfied, maybe it's because the company's values don't match your values.
Absolutely.
So here's how it works. I believe, Amir, there's a piece of paper and there's a pen. Would you like to take us through this?
Sure, actually, and I'm going to speak here straight to the camera. So I want you to close your eyes and to rewind back to your earliest memories, which perhaps you might not even remember, but they're there. Maybe you were 4, maybe you were 5, maybe even 6 or 7. What are some of the painful experiences that you went through? In fact, what is the most painful experience you went through as a child? Okay, so now that you have it in your mind, start typing, or even better, if you have a pen and a piece of paper next to you, start writing. Describe it. What happened? Was it maybe a teacher slapping you? Was it maybe someone shouting at you? Was it maybe you sitting there watching TV innocently and then something happened nearby? Maybe it was your parents fighting. Maybe it was a crime that got committed outside of your house and the police came and the sirens were loud. Maybe actually it wasn't that dramatic. Maybe you were just a kid in school and you fell down and people laughed at you and made fun of you. which is relatively not dramatic, but still, it influenced you, it affected you. Honor that memory, honor that experience, and understand it's not you per se, it's something that happened, and that event shaped you. So describe that story and think about it. Okay, now let's move on further a little bit to perhaps your earlier teenage years. And you can choose any point in your life. In fact, I would actually recommend that you make a timeline of your formative years from the age of 5 until the age of 25. And every year, try to mark down and write down very briefly what happened. It's really useful. So think also of your teenage years, fast forward to maybe the age of 16 or 17, all the way up until 25. Map it all out as a basic timeline, but focus much more on your earliest memories because those are the most impactful ones. As children, oh my goodness, I mean, the stuff that happens to us, it stays with us for the rest of our lives. Now, based on that, I'm going to ask you to make a list of your values and your beliefs. So, we're not ranking these values, we're not trying to say which one is the most important or least important, just freestyle, go with the flow, and write down your first core value or your first belief, and make it one word. Don't write too many sentences. So for instance, you could say freedom, and you can say truth after that, and then you can even write down courage, connectedness, community, friendship, creativity. Just keep writing whatever you want to write, whatever comes up to you. And again, as I said earlier, don't take the values that I just said, because that would be stealing values that are, relevant to me maybe. But write values that are relevant to you. And if they happen to sound the same or be the same, that's fine. Now, after you've written down those values, I want you to look at them and then look at the timeline of your life, your mini memoir, as I like to call it, from the age of 5 to 25. And then look at your values and begin to ask yourself, freedom, I wonder where that came from. And then think back to certain events that happened to your child that maybe made you feel oppressed and made you so badly want to have freedom, which is why you value freedom so much now. And try to understand where that value came from and relate it back to that certain incident in your life as a child or as a teenager. And then on that basis, define what each value means to you. Just doing that alone will give you tremendous clarity, and it will actually help you move forward in life with greater convictions and greater alignment, and then out of that, you will get greater fulfillment.
So the first part, Amir, that you took me through, so you took me through the exercise, and this is a sheet that we worked on. And in the first column, I listed all of my values. Then the second column, you called it distillation.
Yep.
Okay, now in distillation, tell us what happens.
So we list down a long list of values. Say we have 10 to 20 values, right? Now we want to start grouping them and start ranking them. So for instance here, Vishen had transformation, okay, connectedness, compassion, growth as a goal, humanism, aesthetics, vision, happiness, transcendence, love, change, self-directed learning, questioning was a big one, innovation, and futurism. And then I asked you, okay, so what do these have to do with one another? Because they just seem kind of random. But I mean, knowing you, I understand, and I get that they're true to you.
And we put them in buckets. So transformation, growth as a goal, transcendence are all similar, right? And connectedness, compassion, humanism are all similar. And so what Amir was explaining to me is that transformation can mean different things to different people.
Absolutely.
And that's why you got to look at your values and figure out how they cluster together. To me, connectedness and compassion mean the same thing. It's about feeling we're all connected, and I see love for other people as a form of compassion.
Okay.
So to me, connectedness, compassion are the same. So Amir kept getting me to tighten this and tighten this and tighten this until I arrived at 3 distinct values.
So before the distinct values, let's actually go back to the ones that we grouped together. Connectedness, and what was it? Humanism?
Compassion.
And compassion. So okay, connectedness, compassion,
And humanism.
And humanism, right? Initially, they kind of felt random, and I thought you were going to group things differently. Maybe you were going to put connectedness with spirituality or innovation or whatever, and you're like, no, it doesn't really fit in there. Actually, these 3 are grouped together. And I asked you, interesting, connectedness compassion, humanism. Why do you value those things so much? Where did that come from? And you mentioned two things. You mentioned your childhood experiences in school, getting bullied, the teacher talking about the others in negative terms, classifying the world into races and nationalities. You even said you had one teacher.
Racist teachers, yes.
Racist teachers?
Right. It's ridiculous to think about it right now, but yes. Teachers telling me, don't trust people of this particular, I won't say the culture or the color, but don't trust people of this particular culture. They can't be trusted. They're just going to mess with you and take your stuff. Okay,
so I'm actually going to step in and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So sadly and fortunately, I had an upbringing, not from my parents. My parents were actually great. They were a positive influence in my life, and they helped fix and correct a lot of the negative things as I was growing up. But school was pretty messed up. And from school, I ended up getting a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. The Jews control the world.
Wow.
The Jews control the media. And I just picked that up and I believed it.
Because you went to school in Sudan.
And no, Qatar.
In Qatar,
yeah,
right.
Qatar. I was born in northern Sudan, but I went to school in Qatar. And so I pick up those things and I'm thinking, okay, I guess the Jews are bad people. They control the banks. And it's ludicrous. Like when I grew up and I started actually getting to know Jews and having Jewish friends and meeting rabbis and learning a lot more, I just realized it's ludicrous, which is not why I also value very much humanism, okay, and transcendence. And so we share that value in common. And that's why I love Mindvalley being so international and so diverse with people from all over the world.
Right.
But
so let me give a specific example. So I had a school teacher, and I remember this distinctly at the age of 9. A school teacher in Malaysia tell me, America, never go there. They will hate you. You cannot trust these people. But I grew up on American television. I grew up speaking English.
Right.
So I knew at 9 years old that that teacher was full of bullshit.
Yeah.
And of course, I couldn't speak up and tell that to
right.
her. But so you know what happened? America became the #1 country I wanted to visit.
Right.
I decided as I was 11 and 12 years old, my goal became to go to America and join the US Army. Because I had that much love for America. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But today, how being thought to hate, because I was smart enough to discard it, how that affected things is I started a company that is highly multicultural. In this office where we're filming this, right now today we have about 140 different people who carry 40 different passports.
So that's actually really important. There's something that you said.
Multiculturalism.
You said
right.
something very important there. You said, I got to a point where I said, you know what? America is the #1 country that I want to go to, and heck, I might even join the US Army. Because you were angry and pissed off with the stuff you got from the teacher.
Right.
So you wanted to do that as an act of rebellion.
Yes.
Now, was that a mature embracing of the value of freedom or oneness or humanism?
No, it wasn't.
It was mixed with anger and
it was
resentment.
Mixed with anger and rebellion, right. Yes.
But then you joined ISEC, which is this international student organization in the United States. And then ISEC exposed you to a very globalized, multicultural, diverse understanding of the world. And then it kind of tempered things, and it was a healing experience for you.
Right. And so connectedness, right, as a value became so indoctrinated in me, it affected my life choices. I choose to hire people from all around the world. Today, you know, if you apply to Mindvalley and you happen to come from a country where we don't have any employees, you have a better chance of getting in. My children speak 3 languages. My wife is of a completely different religion and culture and nationality. I live in 3 different countries. I've taken that to a whole different level of conscious choice to rebel against the restrictions I had as a kid.
Yeah. So just to sum up that very quickly, I'm going to connect it with a very quick anecdote. A few months ago, I was actually given a talk at YPO. It stands for Young Presidents Organization. It's a place basically where you join if you're the CEO or president of a company that's doing at least $12 million in revenue. And I was in a panel and I was invited to speak on the subject of diversity based on my book and my experiences. And also I brought up Mindvalley. And so I said something provocative on stage because it was all about diversity, right? How to have diversity in your company. I said, here's the thing. If you don't have diversity in your life, if you don't have diverse friends from different ethnicities and religions and backgrounds, don't bother implementing diversity in your company because it's going to be forced, it is going to be fake, and you're just going to be doing it out of political correctness. Instead, as a founder, as a CEO, go out there in the world, travel, and make an effort to get to know people of different cultures. Make an effort to have diversity in your own life, and then start to think about diversity in your business because that way it's not going to be forced and it's going to be a lot more authentic.
Right. So what happened then is, as I group these together, and as you do this as well, you will identify your top 3 values.
Yep.
Right? So mine were connectedness, transformation, and vision. And what Amir pointed out to me is that these values were always in me. I just never given it a name or a label, but it's been driving my choices and my life for at least the last 15, 20 years. And these values are what helped me make Mindvalley what Mindvalley is. But every now and then I would fall into the trap of forgetting what got me started in the first place.
Getting enamored with external things.
And doing exercises where I have consultants or dozens of people trying to develop Mindvalley's values. And every time we did this, we would go off in a wrong direction.
Right.
And now I realize, so Amir did a simple exercise and he made me realize, look, when you're building your website, when you are creating your brand, connectedness, transformation, vision, that's it. That is what is the soul of the company because you're the founder. So that is the mistake that I realize many founders make. You should build a company based on your values. And you shared the story of Elon Musk and how he's able to do it. Would you share that with people?
Right. So with Elon Musk, I mean, he is doing some absolutely big, epic things. And frankly, it is so seductive, to look at what he's doing and say, oh my God, I wish I was doing something as cool and as significant as that. And I kid you not, for a short while when after I landed in Canada recently, as you know, I left Malaysia and I moved to Canada. And I was thinking, what am I going to do with my life now? I've got all these opportunities. And for a little, moment, I thought, man, I want to be like Elon Musk. Because I was just so enamored. He's doing massive things. But I realized, dude, there's Elon Musk and he's Elon Musk and he does his thing and I got to do my thing. So don't make the mistake you made last time, Amir. Focus on your thing and be in alignment with it. And I think that's the big lesson, right? Because we look at a value that's external, we say that's really cool, and then you try to be in alignment with that. Well, actually, that's misalignment. Instead, you should say, what's in me and how can I be in alignment with it? So Elon Musk, from a very young age, he actually talks about this. He would go in his backyard and he would build little mini rockets with like plastic bottles or different junkyard pieces or whatever. And his dad, I believe, was an engineer. He helped him with that. So building rockets wasn't this cool thing he got enamored with and he just decided to do because it's a cool thing. Instead, he had it in him. It was in his DNA since he was a little kid. He was very nerdy. Another thing about Elon Musk, he was severely bullied in school. And we're not just talking taunting and people making fun of him, or we're talking like fist fights. He was punched, kicked. I mean, it was nasty, like a lot of violent bullying. And he talks about how that made him so tough, so resilient, that now he would never give up. He would have to be decapitated before he gives up. That's actually his own wording.
Right, I believe he has a quote on entrepreneurship along the lines of, entrepreneurship is like crawling into a dark corner and chewing on glass.
Yeah. Now,
but you got to go through that shit as a kid to be able to deal with that.
Right. But sometimes, though, I'll just include this because I think it's also a very important distinction for the audience. Sometimes we can also get a little enamored with our own struggle and our own pain, and I know that was a big mistake of mine. Especially as an activist when I was doing a lot of activism and human rights work, as I was also in Mindvalley, and I was just like. I was so attached to the struggle and the meaning of the struggle and then striving for freedom and liberty. And then I get to Canada and I embrace practices like mindfulness again, which I had before, but I kind of forgot about them. So when I began doing that, I understood that, yes, I can value the struggle that I went through as a kid and the strength that it gave me, but I don't have to be in this mode of struggling, that the journey can actually come with ease and a lot more joy.
So let's go on to the second part of the sheet, right? Where you talk about now the business that someone is building or the business you work for and the psychological outcomes, the practical outcomes.
Right. So on one side of this piece of paper, and I'm just going to hold it up here quickly, forgive me for the messed up handwriting. That's actually my fault because I was taking vision through the exercise. But over here, it's all about you, right? It's all about your offer and your values and your beliefs, and then we distill those beliefs. So we always start with beliefs and values, and then we distill them down. Now, on this side, is the market that you want to serve, okay? And this is the big counterintuitive thing about this process, is that there's so many books out there that teach you what's generally called product market fit, right? So they always tell you, what product do you want to sell? Okay, let's look at the potential customers and what are their pain points, what are their frustrations, and what is the desired outcome. Okay, let's map it out, let's do research, and then based on that, let's build a product. Well, sure, you can build a product and it can become very profitable and you can end up serving the market. But guess what you just did? You left yourself out of your entire freaking business because you never even bothered to ask, what is my purpose? What are my passions? What are my core set of values? Now, we've done that, which is why we start there. Then we move to, okay, given that I have these sets of values, given that these are the things that give me fulfillment and that help me heal and grow in my journey, what can I offer out there to the world? And so now you can think, okay, do I want to build a restaurant? Do I want to build an app? Do I want to create a media company? And then on that basis, there are two columns. There is psychological outcomes for the customer, and then there are practical outcomes for the customer. So here's a very simple example. If you want to build a car, then the practical outcome is to get the customer from point A to point B, transportation. And to do so maybe with fuel efficiency, or like Tesla, for instance, it can be an electric car. The psychological outcomes, however, are different because any car can get you from point A to point B, but not every car is the same. So instead of buying a Hyundai, maybe you want to feel significant. And so significance would be a psychological outcome. Right. Maybe you want to feel sexy. And so you get a really cool, sexy car and you pimp the hell out of it. Right? And so sexiness, that feeling of sexiness, can be another psychological outcome. And what that does is, you make this list of things and then you also distill them down. And so you can distill down 2 psychological outcomes and 1 practical outcome, or 2 practical outcomes and 1 psychological outcome.
I see. So let's go through Mindvalley, since you guys are familiar with Mindvalley. So practical outcomes for Mindvalley is we teach people higher performance, career success, how to have a better health and body, better relationships, how we make learning fun, we give them stress relief, we teach them abundance skills. But the psychological outcomes are feeling a spiritual connection, mindset expansion, feeling of connectedness with the rest of humanity, self-awareness, happiness, belonging, calmness, self-love, fulfillment. So you guys see how that works? Practical and psychological. Now, what about people who don't have a business yet?
Oh, that's great. So let's actually take people who are in a career and who don't want to start a business. Maybe they're looking for a better company. So now that you've done the values exercise, you go out there in the world and you try to search for companies that have similar values to yours. So that's the first step, right? Because you have to be nourished, and that's where you get fulfillment. But when it comes to the practical aspects of the career, maybe you want to grow your engineering skills, or maybe you want to grow your management skills. You're already a great engineer, but you want to become greater at your management. So you have to identify, okay, what is lacking in my career right now, and which areas do I want to grow in that are very practical? And don't miss out after that also the psychological outcomes, because you don't just go to a company so you can be a better manager or be a better programmer. Everybody has psychological outcomes. They want to have a sense of significance, or maybe they want to be appreciated, or they want to be recognized, right? And you want to look for companies that are going to provide you that. So that's if you have a career and you're looking to change careers. If you want to start a company, then, look at your values. What makes sense to express your values? So if your values are maybe things like systems, coherence, structures, beautiful structures, and maybe have more of an engineering mind and you want to build an engineering company. And on the basis of that, then, okay, what are going to be the practical outcomes for your clients and the psychological outcomes? Maybe they want to have not just a great product that's built, or an app, for instance, but they also want to have a feeling of confidence, of safety. They want to learn to trust you. They want to learn to relax. They want to be maybe treated like gods, and, So you get to determine that, and you set your own terms. You don't follow the convention, you set your own terms, and you make sure that there's alignment between your values and who you are, that's very important, and then what you're going to provide.
So let's take a step back for a moment. So if you have a business, if you want to start a business, you list down the practical outcomes that you want to give to the world, basing it on your values, and the psychological outcomes that you would like your future customers to have. I shared with you mine. If you are an employee and you're looking to join a business, write down the practical outcomes you would love to have from working in the ideal job and the psychological outcomes. The practical outcomes might be training in web development. A psychological outcome might be friends at work.
Absolutely.
Right? Now what you do is you're going to look at your list of psychological outcomes and your list of practical outcomes and create a distillation. And you can pick 2 from psychological and 1 from practical, or 2 from practical and 1 from psychological. So I've simplified mine over here, okay? So you can see I have my distillation. This is myself, connectedness, transformation, vision, and my distillation from this list that I made. So I had a long list over here. You're going to have your list. And when I distilled it, it came up to higher performance, fulfillment meaning not just happy, but fulfilled. And finally, self-awareness.
Right.
And these 6, tell us what happens here. What are these 6?
You get a balanced value proposition.
This becomes your VP. This becomes your value proposition.
Right.
So in my case, when I did this exercise with Amir, immediately, within 1 day, I went to my web designer and my copywriter and I'm like, we have to change the copy on our website. In fact, we have to change the entire Mindvalley Academy website because I realized our value proposition, the way I was presenting it was out of sync with who I was and the type of company I wanted to create. And now I get that our value proposition is as follows: connectedness, transformation, vision. These are things that built me. And then higher performance, fulfillment, self-awareness. Just 6. That's what I want to give our customers,
love giving that. You
our
enjoy
students.
that.
I love giving that. That's what I want to expose you guys to. And so these 6 things helped us create a new vision for how we wanted to build a company to go forth and make a dent in the world.
And then the best part is, now that you have this set, now you can do surveys, now you can look into market research, and all of that stuff becomes subservient to this.
Subservient, that's the key word. If you are an entrepreneur, do not go out there and do a freaking survey and try to figure out what the market needs and forget what your values are. Because that's how you end up one day at the age of 50 with a company that's doing well, but you freaking out wondering, I hate my job. What the hell did I do? How did I get stuck in this position?
Right?
You got to have a match between your values and the values of that company or that entity or that blog or that work of art or that book that you are getting forth in the world.
Absolutely. And so, now that we've talked about all of that, I think it's just important for me to give a shout out to a good friend of mine and a mentor. His name is David Childs. And when I ended up in Vancouver after I left Malaysia and I knew I had to start all over again, I was in crisis and I needed to figure out what was the next step for me. And so back then he was actually working on this process, and then we teamed up and we made it a lot better, and I helped take it to the next level. So he does this with boardrooms to bring different executives in alignment with each other. So imagine having a company with different, executives and people at the very top who have different ideas of where the company should go, and they're all arguing. He goes in, they pay him like $250,000. He takes them through this process and they're in alignment. And I figured, oh my goodness, what if I can take this process and basically look at a person and say, you've got a boardroom inside of you right now, and they're all arguing. So you've got one vision saying, let's go there. And then there's another vision saying, maybe we should go there. And they're kind of in conflict. Well, what if we did that for, 101? And it's worked tremendously beautifully. And it's something that I'm very excited to present to a wider audience. So thanks for allowing me to share it.
And you have Amir and I were brainstorming the title for his upcoming book. So Amir's current book is called My Islam, and it was voted by...
It's the past book.
Amir's past book was called My Islam, published in 2013. It was voted by Foreign Policy magazine as one of the top 25 must-read books of 2013. And he wrote that book while he was here at Mindvalley. And he has a future book coming up, and we were thinking of a title. What is that title idea that you had?
So it's deliberately provocative because I want people to pay attention to it. It's called $1 Billion Ideology.
Love that.
Subtitle, How Not to Build a Business with a Mission, but a Mission with a Business.
That's what I wanted you to hear. It's about building not a business with a mission, but a mission with a business. When you have your value proposition, that is your mission. That's what you want to heal in yourself and you want to heal in the world. That becomes the mission. Now the next step is, if you can create a business that can take that forward, you're going to win and win and win. I was lucky because my value proposition was I wanted to create connectedness, to create transformation. I wanted to help people get to higher levels of performance, to help people with fulfillment. And so I started an online academy for transformational education. And that's why I wake up every day loving what I do. But 95% of entrepreneurs may not be there yet. No. I had a talk recently with an entrepreneur who runs a furniture store. She was bored with what she did and she was looking for the next thing. And I'm like, how did you get into furniture? She's like, oh, my dad had a store and I just took over from him. Right. And that's the mistake that people make.
Now here's the interesting thing. She could still keep the furniture store potentially if she uses the furniture store as a vehicle for her own growth and transformation based on her values, and then she creates a culture where people are rewarded and where she can cultivate those values in others. That's going to give her much greater fulfillment. So sometimes if it's really bad, you just have to sell the business and get rid of it. But a lot of the time, in fact, the majority of the time, you can absolutely salvage the business. You can reinvent it and infuse it with passion and a new sense of purpose and mission that is aligned.
Right, and when you can do this is when you can create radical transformation in your business and then in yourself. And you can better come up with a way to convey your business and your business's mission to the wider world. So one of the benefits I got from this exercise is immediately a new tagline, a new copy, new ways of talking about Mindvalley came to me after I did this exercise. And that's why I was so excited to get this to the rest of you guys, because this might really help you heal whatever gap you have between that business you run and your inner core. And when you heal that gap and identify what the value proposition is, those 6 important words, you now know how to position your business and take it to the next level. And you said something very interesting to me, Amir. You said, look, all of us in business are trying to often imitate each other, but nobody can imitate you if you've built a business based on your story.
Absolutely.
Because that is genuinely your story.
Absolutely.
Anybody can start a furniture store. Anybody can build an online academy for education, but nobody can imitate what you went through and your story and that mission that you want to take into the world.
100%. And if there's anything that we can recommend to the audience to take with them, I would actually recommend watching movies like Batman, like Spider-Man. Comic books are great when it comes to storytelling and origin story. And we can conclude on this note, will Batman be Batman if it wasn't for what he went through? Batman was orphaned. And that's why he's still grappling with that pain, and there's a bit of a dark aspect to his nature, right? Spider-Man, same thing. Would those superheroes be who they are if it weren't for their origin story? The origin story makes you you. It is your job to go back there with courage, with self-love, self-acceptance. Don't detest yourself for what you went through. It wasn't your fault. You were a kid, for God's sake, okay? A lot of us went through crap. And just embrace that story and understand it gave you so much drive, and in many ways it made you who you are. And the more you open up to it, the more you recognize its presence in your psyche, in your consciousness, you could unlock so much from it that will make you a much better person, a much better human being, and a true visionary.
Beautiful, Amir. Thank you. And if you enjoyed this CE training, the next training you should listen to is the one by Lisa Nichols on how to tell your story. So this training helps you discover that origin story. The next training by Lisa Nichols shows you how to convey that story to the wider public. And this is really how, whether you are running a bakery or you're speaking on stage or you're writing a book, how to turn that story into something that gets people to fall in love with that story, and thus your business and your mission, and thus to get your mission out to a wider world. Thank you for joining us.